Welcome to the Typical Sportsman podcast. I've got a good one for you today. I've got one of those ones that I hope will be thought-provoking. Hope will get you to consider some things. I've got Mr. Chris Parish, not the turkey hunter, the condor. Many of you will remember back at the Pope and Young event in April, I had on Chris Parish, and we talked about the impact that lead in our ammunition has on the wildlife, and encouraging you to consider non-lead options or consider what you do with the animal carcasses in the field that have been shot with lead. Anyways, it was a highly commented on episode. It got a lot of people to think about what they do and why they do it and how they do it. Anyways, one thing that came from that was this evolutionary psychology and how it influences predictable yet thoughtless behavior in hunters. In other words, doing things without even thinking about the impact that they're going to have on the wildlife. It's the whole think before you react natural stimulus. It's what should differentiate us as humans between the animal world. Yet we are all products of biological forcings. It is an incredibly thought-provoking episode, and the premise of it all is to just think about the things that we do as hunters, think about why we do them, how we do them, and when we do them. Are we doing them for any actual real benefit, or are we just doing them because that's what we know how to do? It is a really good episode. We are also joined by Mr. Justin Spring, Executive Director of the Pope and Young Club. And he brings some good light into the fact that oftentimes we are deemed as trophy hunters, and how the very definition that we are given as trophy hunters, that's illegal in and of itself, and it really doesn't even exist in North America. And so rather than quote unquote trophy hunters, we are selective hunters. He also talks about how that all plays a role in the overall herd of an animal and the overall health of an ecosystem. It is an incredibly informative episode. It's an incredibly thought-provoking episode. Guys, this episode is brought to you by my good friends over at Blocker Outdoors. Blocker makes phenomenal clothing. No matter what your pursuit is, they make phenomenal clothing that's not going to break the bank. They also have a lot of clothing in my very favorite pattern of all time. Yes, Bottomland. Guys, no matter what you're chasing, I would highly encourage you, go check out Blocker, because they've got something for you, and it's not going to break the bank. From everyday wear, deer hunting gear, turkey gear, out west, doesn't matter. They've got something for your next pursuit, and it's affordable. It's going to perform, and they've got it in all sorts of cool patterns, just like the Bottomland. Let's jump in with Mr. Chris Parish and Justin Spring and have a thought-provoking conversation.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
If you're a hunter, you need to pay attention. And of course you're a hunter because you're listening to the Typical Sportsman podcast. One of my favorite products of all time, Ancient. They make moccasins, quiet moccasins for stalking, or stalkisins, if you will. These things are absolutely dead quiet. I put them to the test just by sneaking through the house to see if I could sneak up on my wife. And they worked. Shot bears with them, chased elk with them. I've shot deer with them. These things hold up. Why? Because they're 100% American made with real leather. Phenomenal products. They are making old school cool again. Guys, listen, if you like to stock up on animals, any kind of stalking, turkey hunting, bear hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, If you want to get close to animals, you have to walk quietly. I would highly, highly encourage you to go check out Ancient. That's ANXYNT. These are the coolest shoes you'll ever wear. I even rock them. I rock them as everyday drivers, just headed to Walmart because they look stinking dope. Guys, go check them out. Use code Typical Sportsman. It's going to save you 10%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but here's what I'm going to tell you. You're not going to find a discount on these anywhere else. Go check out Ancient, get you a pair of the baddest shoes you've ever owned, and walk quieter and get closer. All right, we've got Justin Spring and the Condor. Chris Parish, not the turkey hunter.
That's right.
Are you a turkey hunter?
I have turkey hunted. I hunt anything.
But turkeys are stupid. Like, nobody enjoys turkey hunting except for the other Chris Parish.
I don't know. I guess my take is a little different because I agree with what I heard early on. The first time you go is for fun. After that, it's revenge.
Now, for those of you, you've probably heard, it's highly regarded. I get comments on that episode all the time that we did at convention about the Falcon and considering the lead that we use in our ammo and considering using non-leaded ammo. And I get comments on that all the time. But I was thinking back, and we were thinking back to the conversation that led to that podcast episode. And there was something that was said that night that I think begs an entire episode. Because basically what we alluded to in that episode, I want to dig deeper into on all aspects, not just lead. And that is to think about why we do what we do, how we do what we do, when we do it, we do it. Because it's important. I mean, we are stewards of the land. We're stewards of the wildlife, and what we do is important. How we do it is important. And there should be some thought put into why we do what we do. Before we get into all of that, which I'm excited to jump into that, Justin, have you got to see a falcon attack anything yet?
No, it's a little on the windy side. They're hanging around the campfire on their posts. They're pretty cool having the birds in camp, but talked a lot about it. But when it's blowing 30, it's not real great to put a hawk in the air. So we went and walked around a bit in the wind this morning, and now we're hanging out and chatting with you on other things, fun conservation.
Now, walk us through exactly what you're doing. This was a trip that was auctioned at the convention. I bid on it. I didn't win it. Sorry, Chris. I would be better company for sure. I'm just kidding. But the description of this trip just kind of got me fired up. So what exactly are you boys doing this week?
Probably you take that one.
Sure. Well, we're out doing what falconers have been doing for thousands of years, and that is two of our guys, actually two of our employees at the Peregrine Fund. And backing up, the Peregrine Fund was founded by falconers. It was their interest in falconry and peregrine falcons specifically that led them to become alarmed because there were peregrine falcon numbers were plummeting. And so that combined with some pretty awesome conservation science resulted in the peregrine falcon being delisted in 1999. We produced over 4,000 of those birds in captivity and released them. And so it's very likely that falcons you see today, including the ones that we're flying here, have some genetic makeup, that's linked to those birds that we reintroduced. So it's one of the greatest success stories in conservation of endangered species. So what we're doing here is two of our biologists and actually one guy that used to work for us, they're all falconers and they're flying long wings. And long wings is a reference for peregrines. And we come up to Montana each year and we host folks that come out, and we donate these trips like we donated the one to Pope and Young. And we bring a big camp set up, have a 25-foot in diameter teepee tent and a hot stove and a trailer. And I do most of the cooking. And we go out every morning, and if the conditions are right, unlike this morning, you let the dogs out of the truck, see some fine bird dog action, you get a point, you unhood the falcon, falcon flies up to anywhere from a couple hundred to maybe 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet. And then you walk in and flush the sharp-tailed grouse, which is what we're targeting, or Hungarian partridge. And then after the flush, that falcon comes down at 100, 150 miles an hour and touches the grouse and either kills it or binds to it and goes to the ground fight or misses. And we had a couple of flights yesterday. We had some guests in, and we had some really good flights, but we didn't have any kills. So it's one opportunity, one shot at it, and then the falconer will take a lure and swing it around. And if you look online, call lure flying a falcon, they call the falcon back and then give it a reward of some food and put the hood back on. And you either move on or you try again the next day. That's falconry.
That is cool. Now, Justin, is Gage there?
Nope, he had to go back to school, but man, even though we didn't get to fly today, just talking to these guys about it, I mean, a lot of these guys are going out and catching these birds wild, and they'll keep them for a season or two and just kick them loose. Like, everything about this, you think all the hunting and everything, and man, this has really opened my eyes. It's a whole nother level of hunting and outdoor interaction that I didn't really know existed at the level that these guys are on.
That's a bummer, man, because Gage would have absolutely just loved this. However, he did shoot his first buck last week.
He did.
That was cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
That was a great buck, man. That's super cool.
Yeah, it was funny. There was actually a bachelor group of 10 bucks, and there was a big 4-point in there that Becca was trying to get him lined up on the big buck, but that one had just looked at him funny. He's like, nope, that's the one. That's the one.
He's got that spring blood. Yeah, he's got that. Yeah.
Becca's like, Gage, the one to the left's a little bigger. He's like, nope, that one. It's like, all right, that's the one we're taking home. So he made a great shot, put it right down, and all worked out great.
That's awesome, man. Before we jump into this conversation, I do want to mention that the new Redneck Nerd shirt is available at pope-young.org. Chris Parish is kind of the definition of that redneck nerd. Reason being, like, if you see this guy, I hope you're watching on either YouTube or Carbon, somewhere you can see this cat, because he looks like somebody that played on my high school football team, which is not a compliment. I'm from the dirty South. Most boys that played on the football team aren't the most intelligent looking fellers. It's what he looks like. If you see him walk in the room, and, I'm just like, dude, look at this big old redneck. Like, I can talk coyote hunt with this guy. And so Justin's like, just go ask him if he shoots coyotes. And I'm like, hey, you coyote hunt? And he's like, yeah. What kind of bullet you use? What's your weight retention? And I'm like, huh? And he just goes off. 2.5 hours later, I'm sitting there like a little girl in a candy store, just like, tell me more. This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. But something that you said that night, has really stuck with me. And that's this idea of thinking before we respond, thinking before we act. And before you tune out and just think like, well, we're talking poaching, like on a big level. I'm not a poacher. I don't need to listen. It goes so much more than just that, because we should consider everything that we do, not just the black and white. This is wrong. Obviously we got to consider those things. But when Chris speaks about these topics, it really makes you stop and go, yeah, I've never considered that. I've never considered the impact that I'm having on the landscape. And so kind of break that down for me, this whole psychological, think before you respond as a hunter, and why that's important.
I think the easiest way to think about it and to start it off, and I don't do short answers, my apologies to your listeners, but the easiest way to think about it is what separates us humans as an apex predator. What separates us from any other apex predator, right? There are differences. And while some of those obvious differences are those predators that are out there in the wild living off of the land, their ability on a daily basis to kill something, to provide the nourishment it or its family needs is pretty important, right? And we're generations upon generations beyond that with humans, because we've developed other ways to secure resources than hunting, but we're still drawn to it. We're drawn to it because it's a part of our DNA, just like it is a predator that's out there living off the landscape. And even folks who don't hunt or fish, I still contest, when I'm talking raptor conservation to a bird group, maybe there's not as many hunters as there are as, when we're talking at the Pope and Young,
Right.
Convention. But I remind people that we all have evolved from hunters. We all come from hunters. It's only a couple, maybe 3 or 4 generations max before everybody's lineage and their family gets into, oh yeah, my great granddad, my granddad, my dad, my mom, whatever. We all hunted. And I think that effective marketing plays upon this innate instinctual behavior that we all have. The things we don't think about there's a stimulus, like someone's threatening my home or threatening my family. Well, sometimes you just respond immediately without giving it a lot of thought. And sometimes that gets us in trouble because we have laws and traditions of civility and the way we get along with one another that keep us from just being instinctive in our responses. And so it plays 2 different roles. One is, when we see that buck or that bull or that tom turkey, what that desire is deep within us. But then for various reasons, each individual might make a decision to take it or not. Just like you started out talking about Gage, you might take it for one reason or another, and you might hold up for one reason or another. And that's the other thing too, that we hear people say all the time, but to think more deeply about this statement that it's not about the kill, right? And we have a hard time describing why it is we do what we do. Well, it's because of the makeup. It's how we're made. And some people say, oh, I like to be outdoors. Well, go for a walk. Well, I like to hike, get some exercise. I want to be with my family. You can do all that without hunting. But my point is we're all hunters. And even people that don't hunt, I think are, I won't say manipulated, but they're marketed to, like, why do you look for a good deal in the store?
Yeah.
You're still acquiring resources. And the people who market products know this and are preying upon that to get you to buy their product. So we're all hunters of one kind or another.
Look at the success of the know where your meat came from movement. The small, people want to know where their food came from. They want to know that it was, that idea is the same thing. I mean,
exactly.
We aren't scavengers. That wasn't where we arose.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And again, it's very loose, right? It's kind of hard to articulate, but yeah.
But and you're absolutely right. This whole idea of not hunting, this whole idea of not eating meat in the scheme of the human race is very, very young. Like that's not an old thought. And to me, it's harder to have a conversation with somebody who eats meat that's against hunting than somebody who tries to take the steps. I mean, we all understand as hunters and conservationists that something has to die for you to live. Like we get that. But to the person who says, well, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian, and they're against hunting, I can almost have a conversation with those people easier than I can the person who's okay to drive to Walmart and buy beef or chicken, but they're not okay with me harvesting the animal myself.
Sure. Man, I think it's that full spectrum, and it just depends on, with a thoughtful, and I don't mean kind, I mean people who think and can think. And even if they don't do something or they despise it or it makes them uncomfortable, if they can't converse about it, it makes it harder to get into the details of, oh, well, if you eat meat or you have leather tennis shoes, you're supporting a market that you probably know very little about. And the more you learned about it, you might choose not to support it. But again, that's a tangential justification for doing it ourselves. But break it down to more simple again, more simple themes, like someone will say, well, humans are the only ones that hunt for sport. Well, I got a problem with sport anyway. I played sports collegiately, and hunting
isn't one.
Is not a sport, but we refer to it as a sport, and I think we've all kind of accepted that. But then it gives people that don't do it or don't understand it the thought that this is like football. No, it's not. It's very different. And then they say, well, and one argument I've had with folks, and I really like this one, and maybe we can get into this one, is animals that live making a living on the landscape, they don't kill and not use it all. There's this angelic notion or something. This that they kill something and they eat it entirely. They use all of its parts and all of that, like the noble predator. Well, the art of killing,
Justin.
the art of killing is not about the kill. It's about being able to make a kill, right? So if you look at the success rate of a predator, let's say a falcon, and we were talking about this morning, Justin asked, what's the success rate of a falconer and a falcon? I'm like, well, there's so many variables in there, but it's not every day they get a kill, nor is it every day that a falcon gets a kill in the wild. And actually, falconers' birds, because they're fed daily, actually have a higher survival rate than young that are fledged in nature. But see, there you go again. The naive person would say, oh man, that's terrible that you would take a falcon from the nest. It's like, well, not when you consider 70% mortality. If you take one out of a nest of 3 or 4 nestlings, you've actually given that bird a higher probability of survival because that falconer is going to feed it every day. His 3 siblings in the nest are not going to eat every day unless mom and dad are doing it great. And then you think about the chase, perfecting their flying skills. Well, they might kill things in excess of what they eat that day because it's not about the kill. It's about being able to kill when you need to. And so that's maybe where we as hunters can exercise that. I can practice the pursuits of hunting. I can practice the fundamentals of shooting, whether it's a bow or a rifle. And we do that, right? And some people look at recreational shooting. It's huge. And they're not killing anything. Why does that appeal to them? Why does it make them feel good? I think it's because that part of us all being a hunter is there. And that would maybe help reframe it out of this leisurely thing that we do or calling it a sport to say we're doing those things that we were programmed to do.
I'll tell you my biggest concern when we call it a sport is that in every sport you have an opponent. Like you're playing against someone else. With hunting, the wildlife is not our opponent. And I tell people all the time, there ain't a person on the planet that loves elk more than an elk hunter. There ain't a person on the planet that loves deer more than a deer hunter, ducks more than a duck hunter. I mean, we love the animals that we pursue. And when we go into the field, and again, we're talking about the people who do think about the things they do, who do consider the actions they take, and they don't just go out and shoot any single deer off the planet and cause a stress on the herd. They're not our opponent. We love the species, and by hunting them, we are helping the growth of the overall herd of the animals that we're hunting. And I think something that ties to this conversation really well is Justin's breakdown of the terminology trophy hunting. Because he put it so beautifully one time that, it finally clicked for me in my head of, trophy hunting isn't even really a thing. Like it's actually completely illegal. So Justin, break that down for me real quick, the difference in trophy hunting and selective hunting.
No, just the idea is, these people are that are adamantly opposed to trophy hunting. You see it in attempted legislation in different states where they say, we're going to ban the trophy hunting of mountain lions. That definition that the anti-hunting group has put out there of trophy, I mean, it basically that the only reason to kill is just to kill it, put its head on the wall and waste it. I mean, there's very few states that what they define as trophy hunting that's even legal. We have, it's wanton waste of game. We have to, retrieve that animal from the field, make use of the animal. We cannot waste it. And a hunter is very quick to turn in someone. You're out in the field and you come across an elk or something that's only half of it's been utilized. You're going to call that in. And so this idea that we're just killing just to put a trophy on the wall, that collector mentality that they've kind of painted as trophy hunter isn't a thing in North America. I mean, there's a couple examples where you may not have to retrieve the meat, but they're very, very minimal. It's not the commonplace. I mean, most everybody is out there. And like, my joke is I love eating meat, but I have a lot of hats and I need somewhere to put it. So I find a bigger animal to chase. We, as a family, we do limit ourselves on what we harvest. And it's not to show our prowess. It's the fact that, if we just went out and shot the first deer we saw, we could completely legally do that. We limit what we're going for to kind of extend the experience and learn more and make ourselves better at it, rather than just, the very first thing that's legal, kill it.
And again, and go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to hear somebody, and not just that's involved with Pope and Young, but that is leading Pope and Young currently. You're our executive director, somebody that is leading the organization that is known as they just care about the biggest and the baddest. They're just trophy hunters. And you came from Boone and Crockett, who again gets labeled as like, they only care about the biggest and the baddest animals. So to hear somebody who's leading the charge say like, that's the furthest thing from the truth. Now, being a selective hunter, we do want to take the oldest, most mature animals off the landscape. And it's not just because sometimes, and I would highly encourage everybody to go back and listen to the Jason Matzinger episode, because we dive into this a lot. But sometimes that's not just the biggest antlered animal. Sometimes the biggest, oldest, most mature animal is already way downhill and he ain't got nothing for headgear. But that's the animal that needs to be taken off the landscape because it's best for the overall population of deer. And so I think it's important that people hear the guy that is steering the ship for Pope and Young say that no, we don't just care about the biggest and baddest animals. However, those are normally the ones that need to be taken off the landscape. And so I like the terminology selective hunting.
Not even necessarily needed, but those older, mature mammals can be taken off the landscape with no net effect on the population.
That's right.
That's the important part. That was the beginning of trophy hunting, the original, conservation movement. Hunting, unrestricted hunting could not have continued, or we would not have wildlife today. The only way that hunting could continue was if they changed the targeting to these old, mature males past breeding prime, left the young alone, left the females alone. That was the only way the hunt could continue and allow wildlife populations to rebound. So people, demonize this trophy hunting idea. It was born in a time that we had absolutely nothing on the landscape, and this mentality, this idea of no net effect on the population allowed them to rebound to where we are today, where it's completely fine to take does. It's completely fine to take young animals because we brought it back. That's a very important thing. And, something we need to realize is folks, history repeats itself. There's a lot on that, but people see today, they see certain game populations, whitetails, a prime example, is inexhaustible. Man, we've got the technology and the ability to drive that to nothing in no time, and we've got management now and some safeguards in there, but realistically, we have the technology and the ability to eradicate a species. And that's the last thing we ever want to do, and by targeting these older, mature males and being selective, you're never going to hurt the population.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll help it. I mean, by taking off those bucks that are taking food and bedding and shelter from the younger bucks that are still breeding, you're giving them a healthier environment to live in and to continue to breed. So yeah, I mean, and that's just, again, something that I think plays a role in this conversation that we're having is considering the animals that you shoot and why. What did you want to say just a second ago, Chris?
Oh, it was right when you were talking about, I was thinking of as honing skills, right? We hone skills so that when we need to, we can secure resources. We like to hone our skills more than we like. And I would say this is true about most hunters, because it probably depends on region, but there are a lot of hunters I know, they're like, oh, I'm going to get into antelope hunting. And then they don't take care of the critter and the meat's terrible, but they continue to hunt. Why would they do that if it's not the goal? Now we're very different, right? Because right. I mean, we're I would say verging on very religious about the securing and procuring of resources and cleaning it and getting it cooled down and packaging it. I mean, we're going to have fish tacos tonight here at camp, and I've still got frog legs in my freezer.
Nice.
And I won't tell you how old they are until you see what good condition they're in, because I really took good care of them, and I vacuum sealed them in heavy mill bags. And
okay, I know if you got frog legs, you are a dumb redneck. Like,
yeah.
dude,
Well,
you're in good company
redneck.
now.
I prefer educated.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
But educated doesn't mean it's stuck. It just means you were educated at one time. No, but get back to Justin and I have talked about this, and I can't remember where it ended up, and it was probably late night over brown liquid. But the whole notion, before we start talking about taking the animals who have already contributed to the genetics of the population, preventing them by taking them home and using that meat. And as you said earlier in the conversation, something has to die for us to eat, right? No matter what it is we're eating.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there's also those animals would otherwise starve to death in the hard winter. Especially up here in Montana, those animals could die of a hard winter. So that's another argument I've heard when people are talking about justifying hunting. But getting back to the trophy and why innately we, if you see two animals, most people are going to take the bigger one, either the bigger body or the bigger antler. But what does it mean? A bigger body is usually because, well, that's more meat. It's just like you go to I was listening to the cattle futures this morning, and they're talking about the different classes of cattle and which ones bring the better money. Well, it's because there's a higher return on investment for one animal of a heavier weight. That makes sense. But now the representation of those animals who are very likely heavier are the ones that are sneakier and better than you as a pursuer. And so that's something I find interesting, is if we think back to when we transitioned as humans from hunter-gatherers, or from just gatherers to hunter-gatherers. Imagine the prowess of that first, and I'm going to pick a guy. I'm not being sexist here, but I mean, it's usually the guys. Not to say there aren't some bad A women hunters out there and they can drive it home. But when you talk about the average person that comes in to camp and they just figured out about fire and figured out that, hey, you can take a deer, and it didn't matter which deer it was. You can take a doe and bring it to camp and cook that thing, and the whole tribe, the whole family eats, right? Man, that person that secured that resource, they have an elevated status now. And then they teach another one to do it, and somebody else is doing it. Well, now everybody's bringing in a doe. Well, everyone knows that does are a little easier to find, right? They're more numerous. They spend more time out in the open, et cetera, et cetera. So what are we going to do to elevate that status? You want to be successful, and this gets back to maximizing your number of eventual descendants, which is a fancy way for say have lots of babies, right? Because that's the winning game. That goes back to Darwin and the other guy, I forgot his name. Anyway, the point being is we are competitive by nature. Why? Because competition means that we prevail, our families prevail, and our communities prevail. And so making it harder and harder by going out to get that elusive buck. Well, now anybody can go get a doe, and then somebody comes in with the big buck, and they're like, wow, that took a lot of skill. This is the point. Honing our skills, it also gives us satisfaction. Being able to shoot well.
Yeah.
You can be the best shooter and never kill an animal, never go hunting. But it's all a part of the same evolutionary game that builds us into the people we are today. And that's the part that we don't think about, why we enjoy it. We just do. And it's what we've done. It's tradition, it's culture, those things. But the bigger animal shows that you have a higher level of skill. And
or fitness.
Or fitness. Yeah, exactly. Except we define that if we bring home a big buck.
Right. Right.
Who doesn't love a good gun? Who doesn't love a good gun shop? Just walk in, get up on the countertop stool, and share stories with the boys. Talk guns, talk calibers, talk recent hunts. It's a good time. Gun shops are a great place to go and hang out. However, There's a couple gun shops that do it better than others. And then there's one gun shop that really stands out, Powder and String Outfitters. Yeah, I'm a little biased because it's right here in the great town of Wellington, Kansas, right here in my hometown. However, I can tell you that anybody that walks into Powder and String is basically blown away, because Powder and String Outfitters takes you back to a time where, downtown shops were experts in their trade, where a man's word was his bond. They got a creaky floor, and they got rustic decor, and they've got a massive selection of guns and ammos. They're a full service gun shop. They've got an in-house hot bluing facility. They've got a full machine shop. They've got a custom legendary gun engraver. Literally, when I say legendary, Mr. Brian Strange, their hand engraver is world class. They've got the engraver. They've got gunsmiths. They have everything that you could ever possibly dream of having in a gun shop. They're also a small town, hometown, family-owned shop where you can call and talk to the owner. Guys, they've taken that same feel, that same great gun shop feel, and made it available online, powderandstring.com. You can buy all your guns, all your ammo, all your shooting accessories right there online in the convenience of your own home. You can stand behind the people that you're supporting because the guys are phenomenal. And again, I am of the opinion that if I'm going to shop for guns and ammo, I don't want to do it at a big box store. I want to support somebody like the Powder and String staff. So guys, go check them out for all your guns, all your ammo, all your shooting accessories. They've got it. They are knowledgeable. You can call them. You can talk to somebody, figure out what you need, why you need it, how you need it. They'll take care of you. I actually just bought a new shotgun there. Bought a new A300, and the first shot out of that gun was a dead bird. That's what I'm talking about. And I got it based off their recommendation. Guys, they're phenomenal people. Somebody you can be proud of supporting. Go check them out, powderandstring.com. I'm curious to know, and really for everybody listening before the conversation continues, where did this journey of actually truly thinking about your actions, where did that start? I mean, because, being a kid out in the backyard, you had a BB gun, like you just shot birds and squirrels. And I mean, we just shot everything. I mean, we didn't care. We just wanted to go out and shoot stuff and have fun. And, as a kid in a tree stand, I wasn't thinking like, well, it's a small doe. I'm thinking like, dude, there's a doe right here. Thwack, put an arrow through her. And for me, I'll tell you where it started for me. It actually started in Bible college, and a question was raised on why I believe what I believe spiritually. And I answered, and the professor said, but why? And I was like, and he's like, I'll tell you why, because that's what daddy taught you growing up. And you've never really truly asked yourself, why do I believe what I believe? And so that journey kind of started to happen for me spiritually. Like, okay, why do I believe the things that I believe? And that kind of spilled over into, why am I the type of husband that I am? Like, why do I do the things as a husband that I do? And then it slowly started to evolve into hunting. Like, okay, why do I choose to shoot the bigger animals? Why do I choose to use archery equipment over a rifle? Why do I choose, like, what are my motives behind this? And so for me, that was kind of the journey that I started going on. And then I started meeting guys like Justin, who really, and Justin challenged me in ways before he was even at Pope and Young, to where I go, oh crap. Like I never even considered that. Like, here's this guy from Boone and Crockett challenging me on something. And I'm going like, dude, I've never even thought about that. And it really makes you consider, why do I do the things I do? And so it just, for me, it's just continued. And then, you bump into a guy at a convention and he's like, well, what do you do with the coyotes when you shoot them? And I'm like, I don't leave them laying in the ground, if I'm not going to anyways. And it just makes you think about why you do these things. And so that's my hope is that just like the episode in the past that we did at convention, will get people to consider, why are we doing the things that we do? But that being said, where did that journey of that, when did that evolution for you guys as an outdoorsman and a hunter and a provider begin?
Man, I think certain people are just wired differently. mean, throughout history, we've had thought leaders. We've had people that question, why do we do it this way? Why does the ship not show up, all of a sudden on the horizon? Why is it the top of the mast first? There's just people that think more about what they're doing. And it's not like, I think people specialize, Chris and I are inquisitive people that it's like, are we doing the right thing hunting, or is this decision right? And you just, some people just think about those things. I don't know when it started, because I learned to hunt from my parents, but man, the level I took to the ethical pursuit and fair chase and doing it right and worrying, are we doing it the right way? That was something that was not nurtured by any means, I don't think. Wouldn't you feel the same about,
Yeah, it's hard to separate the nature versus nurture, the effect and the impact that your culture and your traditions and all the way down to a family to, Western Hemisphere versus other countries. I think it really became more pronounced for me in my travels around the world working in Raptors, where you met other cultures and you met folks from other cultures, and you'd see them do something that would be a big no-no back home, right? And then you start thinking, well, why did they evolve differently? Why did their habits develop differently? And
give me an example of that.
Well, the one that sticks out the most is I've probably overused and abused it, but the taboo of some cultures, the taboo of eating swine. You think about when that started, and you know something about I almost said tuberculosis. Trichinosis. Thank you. It's been a long couple of days. You think about trichinosis. Well, what better a thing to develop into your culture if disease is a problem, and it seems like it's related to pigs. So let's not eat those things because they're nasty. And then that curbs the disease that was impacting those societies. Now, I just thought about this. I don't know if this is the case, but it stands to reason that if something's bad for you and bad for your people, then, incorporating that into your belief system and curbing the behavior of use that results in the problem makes sense. I'm not sure if that's the way it evolved, but I talked to a friend of mine, and I love to talk, and we talked about this, Dylan, last time after the last podcast, that I love to talk to people of different religions, and that are willing to engage with you and talk about it. And the same thing, I asked this friend of mine down in Salt Lake, and he's a bishop, and I was like, hey, I got some questions, because you hear all this stuff in the fluff of the internet or whatever. And let's have some questions, like, tell me about the caffeine thing. And tell me about the, alcohol thing and the tobacco thing. And he goes, he said, I'm not quite so sure that for tobacco, and you'll get a kick out of this one because we both use tobacco. He's like, I'm not sure it wasn't whoever was cleaning up the spittoons just finally said, enough is enough. I'm not cleaning this up anymore. And this is bad for people. And it's a part of our religion. And I laughed because it was not it was not this rote answer of, well, you just know that it's a bad thing or whatever, but how traditions come about and how that becomes adopted. And then once it's long enough, this is another example, Dylan, coming from a different angle. Well, you do what you do because it's what you do, and you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't think and you don't question, then maybe you could be led astray and be to become convinced, for example, that hunting is taboo. I mean, look at city centers. It is happening. But if they thought about it and thought about their own heritage and their own history, and how even if 2 generations, 3 generations back, they weren't hunters themselves, that they were providing some commodity that allowed them to trade, to procure resources. So, things like that. I think that's a fun thought exercise, and it might cause people to be more thoughtful in their actions rather than just responding instinctively to a set of stimuli.
So, and one thing that on the topic of this, I think if we could just challenge each other and when someone says, let's go do this, let's go shoot ducks, let's go whatever. If we just say, well, why are we doing it? Like, what's the purpose behind it? and get them to really think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, man, it's just because, again, provoking those thoughts of like, what is this because it's best for the overall duck population, or is it, because we want to eat ducks, or is it because, what's the reason behind it?
Suffer.
And Justin,
Yeah.
Justin, yeah, because Justin has challenged me like that. I mean, I'm like, hey, dude, I'm going to go shoot coyotes. And he's like, well, it's actually bad for the, and I'm like, shut up, Justin, it's fun. But then again, he just goes, so now we're just killing for fun. Like, we're not killing for a purpose. And I'm like, crap. Like, okay. So then you got to really stop and consider, like, okay, well, why am I going coyote hunting? Well, when it all boils down to it, it's just because it's fun. Like that's all there is to it. So what do you think, that being said, what do you think the biggest things that hunters should start considering are?
Man, I the reason I give you a hard time on the coyote thing, Dylan, you look at the actual population dynamics of people just shooting the occasional coyote. If the goal and the perception is, well, if I see a coyote and shoot it, I'm going to save a fawn or two. When in actuality, unless you take, 80% of the population, you're never going to actually have that effect. So when your actions potentially have the exact opposite effect of what you're thinking, you got to be thinking about that, And
an example on that one, managing condors, and this might get me in trouble, but maybe not with this audience, but I'm going to say it anyway. Coyotes, because they're so efficient and effective at what they do, you take a newly released condor that wasn't raised in the wild, right? Same captive breeding we were talking about with falcons. We take these birds from captive propagation and you release them to the wild. There's a steep learning curve. And if they choose to go to sleep on the top of the mesa, the top of the cliff, or the bottom of the valley floor, they have a good chance of running across coyotes that night, because coyotes are out doing what they do and they're damn good at it. And so we would at times think, well, we need to knock down the number of coyotes around the release site. And I was happy to do that. It was one of my first jobs at Game and Fish, was shooting coyotes for canine distemper testing. And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then I started reading more about it. And to your point, if you shoot the first one you see, and it happens to be the dominant bitch of that territory, you could actually increase the density of coyotes there, because it'll open up the territory to subadults that come in, and you might double or triple or quadruple the number of coyotes in that territory because you killed the wrong one. So the intricacies of that, I think, fall into place of, man, you really got to be thoughtful and mindful and educate yourself on what it is you think you're doing, and not just being led by the nose ring. And that was actually, I think, what I said in that last podcast is, educate yourself to the point, ask questions so that you're not led by the nose ring to begin parroting things that you can't defend. Exactly. if you just say as a hunter, well, I hunt because it's about my family, and we're pretty protective of our families, and we like to be outdoors. Well, that's an easily defeatable justification, right? You need to be more knowledgeable and be able to say, well, the art of wildlife management, of which hunting is a major part, can play a significant role in maintaining healthy populations, whether you hunt or not. And nobody, even the anti-hunters, are against healthy populations of wildlife and the diversity of wildlife. So by just saying, well, I hunt because it's healthy and I can get outdoors, well, that's easily defeatable. So don't be led by the nose ring of just parroting things that people say that are popular or that you like. Ask yourselves the questions. And you know what the other thing I found in my years in conservation? Call those thought leaders up and have conversations with them. A lot of them will answer the phone or return your email and talk with you. And then you learn exponentially at that point, because it's not just about you going out and doing your own research, but those conversations like these podcasts are really important and thought-provoking.
And I don't want to get off on the rabbit trail of coyotes, but we're going to for just a second. The 80% population, kill the 80% of the population. What scale is that? like 80% of the coyotes on my property, 80% of the coyotes per square mile, 80% of the coyotes in a county, 80% of the coyotes. I mean, I can kill 80% of the coyotes on my property.
And then the neighboring population is going to come in. At the end of the day, for landscape level removal of coyotes to have the actual correct effect is pretty much unattainable for the average sportsman. Would you not agree?
Yeah,
I would. And again, in wildlife management, I still remember this. I don't remember the citation, but I bet if Heffelfinger was on here, he'd tell us exactly what it was. But it was about the Anderson Mesa population of pronghorn, and they were trying to increase fawn survival. And I forget what the number they had to kill, but that's a good one to look up. And that was back in the 60s. They did that study. I don't remember enough about that one, but again, it's just being mindful, learning, and then be intentional, with the decisions you make. And I've learned that with the lead issue. What we've learned about lead poisoning and its potential impact on scavenging and predatory wildlife gives me pause. And every time we explain it in that way, that's not threatening, about education and choices and being intentional to avoiding negative outcomes if you choose to, it's always very successful. People are like, oh man, I had no idea. What do I need to do to not do that?
Well, and it's really not much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the funniest thing is it's not, of course there's these perceived barriers of costs and whatnot. It's like gas goes up by 10 cents and that all of a sudden makes no difference on your hunting trip.
Yeah.
It's a minimal thing and just thinking about it, but
it's also just being beat down, right? As we get older, I get more and more grumpy. Like I look at advisory levels of fish consumption and I love to fish. And, you're only supposed to have this many meals of walleye out of this water because of the toxins in there. And after a while, I'm like, you know what? The damage is already done with me, but enter in my grandson. And now I'm thinking, oh, wait, how many times do we have fish? We don't want to give him that, so I'm turning into a grumpy old man. But I'll say things like, well, for me, I've lived longer than I'm going to, so I'm going to go ahead and eat it. But am I going to feed it to my grandson? And I'm going to be more mindful of the next generation.
Well, it's kind of a tangent here, but I got a question for you now.
Yeah.
Shoot a deer in Montana and test positive for CWD. Would you eat it?
Oh, man.
Oh.
Even though there's been no cases, and you guys are more educated on this than I am, there's been no cases of human transfer, right?
Correct.
I don't know.
See, I think Beck and I would eat it, but we would not feed it to Gage.
And I'm sure of that. I would not feed it to my grandson. And that is a big deal. I mean, what if, I'm sure there's a lot of research and a lot of conversation on this, but my easy off intentional decision or choice would be hunt in an area where they don't have it yet. But the way it spreads, right? The way it spreads, now you take that management tool away from controlling deer populations and whitetail in the Midwest and Northeast, and now you've taken away a huge management tool that insurance companies are surely interested in.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of it is the misfolded protein, as it sits, cannot attach to human protein, which is why it can't cross that species barrier. But the more times you're exposed to it, the higher likelihood that protein would mutate to where it could cross the species barrier.
Right. I don't know. Was that the same? Remember Mad Cow? And they're like, oh, it's not a problem. Then people started contracting it. Highly pathogenic avian influenza. Humans can get it and carry it.
Right.
But that's a scarier thing. That's maybe not like the fish might have a little more mercury in it in one place or another. That's
right.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
Yeah. So Dylan, the last one, you were talking about being mindful, and this is going back to my life pre-hunting world. They're doing a project now where barred owls that are common in the east are moving into spotted owl habitat in the Northwest. And the federal government is doing a program where they're going to start shooting the barred owls because they're out competing a spotted owl. We are picking one species over another. We're picking a winner or loser and actually shooting these owls. Now, the basis of this is even more interesting. The reason the two species separated to start with was because the mountains acted as a barrier to movement. And so the spotted owl was created in the northwest, the barred owl existed in the east. With warmer climate now, the mountains are not acting as a barrier, so the barred owls are coming back in. Are we playing God by shooting these barred owls? Are we doing the right thing to save a species? What's the conservation play here? And it isn't like they're going to have a barred owl season and we're talking about hunting these things. This is a conservation action, management action done by, professionals. But this is the type of thing that people need to be thinking about with conservation. Is that really the right play here? Are we going to look back on that and be like, wow, who did we think we were to make that call?
And what are they saying this will achieve?
Even after they stopped or severely limited the spotted owl habitat being logged, which is the original reason that a bunch of the Forest Service reduced a bunch of public land timber harvest. They said that the spotted owl's population was in decline from overharvest. So they quit that. They maintained the old growth habitat. They stopped what they thought was the problem. The owl population of the spotted owls continued to decline with the influx of the barred owls from the east. So the population is still decreasing. They're still faced with extinction. So this is the next step, is to try to remove this other species competing with them.
Interesting. I'll tell you what blows my mind even more than that. First off, I like to think I know things about wildlife, and I've never even considered the owl. That's why I'm like, man, Justin, he's just a straight up G. He thinks he just hears all this stuff and knows it. And it's just like, dude, how? What would you say are ways that people can be more informed outside of just their little 40-acre plot that they're deer hunting on? Because these issues are something that, and I'm not saying everybody in the world should concern themselves with the owls, but as a wildlife conservationist, we should be informed on these things. So A, how do people stay more informed on these issues? And B, how do they weed through all of the conversations? And I think I asked you this on public land, because a lot of times it's so hard to decipher what is good and what is bad. So how do they inform themselves on these things, and how do they weed through all of the information to actually figure out what is good and what is bad?
Step one, read the entire article, figure out where it came from, and find somebody that absolutely detested that organization, and then read their take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, watching the full spectrum of news from Fox to NPR.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because you can hear one side, and it's the same way with science. And I think people get the wrong impression, or they make false conclusions about science. Science is a step-by-step iterative process of asking questions, devising studies, and then seeing if it can be repeated to get the same results each time. That's the scientific method in redneck.
Right.
Right. And then if you do it repeatedly and it doesn't have the same outcome, then you know that you've not considered all the variables in there, that it's more complex than you made it by the question you asked and the study that you devised to test that one variable. Does this variable in this case equal that every time? So that is the scientific process. But what you'll find once court cases begin happening, you'll have a PhD scientist arguing on either side of the debate. And that causes a lot of people to say, well, then science must not be good. Well, science is neither good or bad. It's science. The interpretation of the results is where you get differing opinions, even by educated PhDs. So for the lay person, and I still feel like I'm in this boat, for the lay person, it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, relate it to something at home, right? If your neighbor says, your neighbor's car looks great, their pickup truck's always shining, and they don't wash it any more than you do, you're going to be curious as to what they're using, right? Hey, and then you're going to try it. And if it works better, you're going to now use that. Does that mean that you're going to use that for the rest of your life? No, there'll be new products come along. And so I try to relate it to things like that and be sure that you're not just doing things you do because it's what you do, and being mindful that what you don't know, you don't know. How do you get over that? Podcasts are great. There's a lot of people out there, but don't trust the people on them. Don't trust me. I mean, I'm giving you my worldview on some of these things based on my experiences, but that's what I love about podcasts and comments, because you'll get somebody like a Heffelfinger who's so specialized in some things, and he'll call me up and say, hey, actually, that's wrong, and here's the study you can read. That process of being willing to engage, that's what learning is. And it doesn't all have to be. Yeah.
There was actually something that came up at convention that you and Heffelfinger disagreed on. I can't remember what it was, though.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember.
And the beauty of it is Jim and I mean, he is not afraid to come out and say, hey, I don't think you have that just right. And here's why. Look at these papers, read these studies. And then I will. And we evolve in our thinking, and we evolve. But it doesn't mean that we have it figured out. Right. It just means we're more and more refined in our confidence that the decisions we've made based on these data, we're getting better each time. And that's the other. I don't know what this outcome is called, but as we mature and as we age, we get grumpy. That's how I explain it. But you kind of throw away that, it's all going to hell. Show me a generation. And you're old enough probably to remember, your great-grandfather or great-grandparents, your grandparents and your parents. And every generation always says, it's going to hell. You'll never catch as many fish as we did when I was a kid. But if you look at the data, actually, the data don't always support that. And go back to Aldo Leopold talking about how few turkeys there were, when he was in New Mexico and Arizona, and how many there are today. In some cases, it's not that it's all getting worse. In many cases, it's gotten better. And so not falling into that trap of it's not as good as it was when I was a kid. Well, you know why? Because when you're a kid, it was new and it was great. Mm. And so if you filled up a bucket, 2 buckets full of crappie, and now there's a 20 fish limit and that bums you out, well, think about the reasoning for that. It's so that you can maintain populations, so that more people can use it, because we in society, here's the kicker. We choose to manage for opportunity. We choose that. And so when it comes down to that, and this always gets down to it, and I think this is a great reflection on, I shouldn't say it's great. It's not because I said it, but it comes down to, what do you want? Right? Look at the elk reintroductions that have happened across the nation. Right. That system was working without elk in it. And that system used to have elk in it, but it comes down to society choosing what we want. With changes in climate affecting the distribution of barred owls and encroaching in upon the spotted owls, that being an issue, it's about what we want. Do we want to maintain diversity and maintain populations of endangered species because we don't want them to slip away? That's a choice. And in a democratic republic that we live in, when it's functional, big qual. Well, we have to. Who was it that said, now you have this republic if you can keep it? I mean, there was a lot of wisdom, and that was right after it was all written and ratified and signed. So it does come down to, do you want it? And with vastly changing or rapidly changing landscapes, whether it's due to changing temperatures or anyway. We also have to think, what do we want? We didn't need to save the condor from extinction, as an example. The system was working without them. But look at what we found by taking those 22 individuals, the last ones. We produced them in captivity and we released them back on the landscape. By studying those birds we released on the landscape, I, as a lifelong hunter, learned that something I'd never thought about before, and that was the type of ammo I used, has the potential to poison and sometimes kill scavenging wildlife. I would never have known that had I not been a part of keeping condors on the landscape.
Right.
but it's a choice. It's a choice. And if I believed on the lead issue, if through my 18, 20 years of working on this issue and talking with my fellow hunters and anglers about lead, if I believed they understood the connection between the ammo we use and wildlife, and they chose not to use lead-free or take other precautions like removing carcasses from the field, if I thought that was the case, I have to abide by that because I live in a society that votes, and it's about what we want. And so the reason I continue to press on is that every time I have this conversation, I just had it in the hardware store in Malta, Montana. And I said, man, you guys got a lot of lead-free ammo in here for rifle. I was like, why is that? And he said, well, partly because some of the places where you have to hunt or where you hunt, you have to use it. He goes, but man, those solids they really work and people like them. And so again, it's still a choice. And I think that's been the premise of everything we've done with the partnership is making sure it's still a choice.
Dylan, you asked about, how do you know you're fully informed? I mean, obviously once I heard the gospel of lead from Chris, I was converted right away. And, I tell people about it that are initially hesitant, so I actually engage with people that are like, well, I'm not going to change. This is ridiculous, and have that conversation, and do they instantly throw up their hands and say, I'm never shooting lead again? No, but they start to think about it.
Yep.
And if they have the option, they're sitting there in the store and they're both similar, they're going to be like, you know what? What's it really hurt if I use this non-lead projectile?
Yeah.
And I think that's how you're in the right, is have those conversations with people that disagree with you, question where you're coming from, make sure you're not, blinded by your own personal bias, be willing to change your mind. But at the same time, if you're not given evidence that is to the contrary, there's nothing wrong with sticking to your guns.
Yeah. And listening, I've already forgotten the citation, and my buddy, Paul, who's here in camp, he'd tell you immediately who it is, but it was a philosopher type statement. It said the highest form of intelligence is empathy.
Yeah.
That if you can pause and listen, you might learn something, and it might even reshape what you thought you knew. And to do that is tough in this day and age because opinions, you know what they say about those. Right. But it's I think it's important. And if you can get people to be thoughtful, then their intentions will be more well-informed, and their actions then would have less of an impact and actually, make the place someplace we'd want to show our grandchildren, and to teach them how to think, not what to think.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that I learned about, I didn't know going to college, while I was playing football, I was studying forestry. I didn't know you could have a career in wildlife management. And of course, when I went back home and told them I was going to be and work for Arizona Game and Fish, they said, oh, you're going to be a cop? I was like, no, there's a lot more that goes into game and fish agencies than law enforcement.
There are very few things that I have with me every time I'm in the outdoors. Whether I am upland hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, just out shooting my bow, out checking trail cameras, very few things that are always with me. One thing that I always have with me is my binocular harness. And I searched the world for what I felt to be the best binocular harness. In my opinion, there's a fine line in binocular harnesses. Either you get a lot of space for everything you need, but they're big, bulky, and heavy, or they're super streamlined and I just don't have space for everything that I want to have on my chest. Alaska Guide Creations makes phenomenal harnesses. Guys, I wear them all the time. I wear my harness probably every day at some point in my day. And so comfortability is important to me. The way that it stays put where I want it is important to me, but also having enough compartments and being able to move things around modularly to fit it where I want it is also really important to me. I want my rangefinder in a certain place. I want my knife in a certain place. I want my binos to fold out in a certain way. And with Alaska Guide Creations, they have a full line of binocular harnesses that you can make exactly how you want them. I can put different pockets right where it's going to work best for me and my system. Guys, Alaska Guide Creations is the best, hands down, in my opinion, harness you can get, and take it from a guy who pretty much lives in them. Go check out Alaska Guide Creations for your next and your last bino harness. You know, you said something when the idea of this podcast came up, and you said you used the term predictable yet thoughtless behaviors.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what do you think are maybe the most predominant like thoughtless behaviors that we as hunters make, or B, the most harmful thoughtless behaviors that we make?
Oh man.
I mean, I think the most predictable negative thing hunters do is just instantly get defensive when questioning on what we're doing. Just instantly want to fight. And
I think, no, you're right. That's probably the best one, because then when you show that you're buggered, you know, that you're already losing. And especially if it's talking about, you know, the right to hunt. If you get flared up and say things that, you know, people who've been in the business a long time is like, it's our God-given right. Well, okay. Yeah. It's a right that we have put into our civil infrastructure and the way we govern ourselves. And that's different than being a given right. That, you know, don't get defensive. Don't get defensive and try to talk people down and talk them through it. And I know a lot of people are probably listening to this and saying, well, I don't have time for that. Well, I think we all have time for the future and making sure that our kids and grandkids have the same opportunities we did, so that they can have those traditions and understand why they're there and how cherished they are. And to be able to explain that to somebody who doesn't understand that is the very thing that you have to do in order for us in this democratic republic to retain our rights and the laws that support them to be able to continue to hunt and fish.
You know, Chris, I should have called you the moment this happened and got your take on it. But one of the most controversial things, I shouldn't say controversial, one of the most things that the one thing that was said on this podcast that created more arguments and more name calling and more you idiot when they said it, was that hunting is a privilege and not a right.
Yeah.
And everybody on social media lost their freaking mind. So much so that like I really did a deep dive into this and formulated a video and put it out, you know, explaining ourselves and what we meant, how we meant it. And people just could not wrap their mind around that hunting is a privilege and not a right. And if we don't start making better decisions, we can lose that privilege. Yeah. And they just lost their minds, dude. I honestly should have called you and just, you know, had you rant for a minute on camera.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it helped or not, but
No, it wouldn't have helped, but it would have been awesome.
I know
it would have made it worse for sure.
Yeah, right. But I think when you get, you know, if you ask the used car salesman about the details of a vehicle, you know, and they get jumpy, you can buy a car from them?
Yeah.
No. If you say, you know, who owned this? And they're like, oh, I'm sure it was well taken care of. And, you know, I mean, just look at it. I mean, look how it shines. It's beautiful. It's like, you going to buy that car? No. You're not going to change people's minds if you're jumpy. And to agree to disagree is okay. But I think to just write things off as this is just another attack on hunting, okay, maybe it is. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to educate yourself and inform yourself and mobilize? I mean, that's one of the biggest problems we have in hunting and angling is we're not terribly well organized and we don't represent ourselves because we just want to be left the hell alone to do what we've done our whole lives and the generations before us. But I don't think we have that luxury anymore.
So what are, and I think this is coming at a great time because, you know, you've got a lot of people are out hunting right now. What are some things just as they take the field, more so than just like trying to figure out like, okay, which buck should I shoot? What's the biggest, baddest buck? what do you think the best thing that hunters can consider when they go into the field, no matter the pursuit? I mean, you've got ducks firing off right now. You've got pheasant, quail, deer, thermal coyotes is open now, Justin, in Kansas, just so you know. But they opened it. Now it's open like 10 months out of the year almost. It only closes for 2 months, I think.
Hey, Dylan, let me guess, you have more coyotes?
No. Anyways, what are some things that people should just keep in the back of their mind? A thought, about maybe it's how we represent ourselves as hunters. Maybe it's how to convey our lifestyle. Maybe it's the things that we do. But what are some thoughts that you would say, hey, just as you go into the field, consider these things?
Conduct yourself like you're always under a freaking microscope, because as a hunter you are.
Yeah, and that can be, that can be highlighted by the way people leave their camps, or the, trash on the landscape, or rutting up a road when they, really shouldn't be on that road. And, when it comes to the ranching community, here we are in Montana, where there's a lot of these block management areas where ranchers allow us hunters to go and sign in our names and go hunt on their property. I mean, that is such a nice gift to us hunters coming in from out of state. And, we got accosted by a guy. He proclaimed Idaho when he saw my license plate. He said, "Go home." And I said, "Sir, as far as I know, I am home." "Well, you're from Idaho." I said, "Well, Idaho and Montana are both in the United States of America, are they not?" And then he grinned a little bit, and we had a good conversation afterwards. And then turns out that he was saying, "Well, I have a little hunting cabin down there, and I've tried to get to know some hunters around here and see if they could help me out, because I'm an older guy and I'm alone. And man, if I could just get a little help on my cabin, I'd let people use it." And I said, "Well, maybe you ought to start with something other than go home."
Right.
Yeah, you might get a little more help.
Dylan, like Chris just touched on with the BMAs. I mean, my son got his first deer in Montana on a block management area. He had 10 absolutely amazing mule deer for a 10-year-old. They were the only ones out there. And, Montana has an ability where you can send the landowner a message. And the very first thing we did was tell Gage, you're going to send him a thank you note, and tell him how much you appreciate it. And he did an absolutely wonderful job, thanking him for opening up the land and the opportunity and how exciting it was and how much fun he had with mom and dad out there doing it. That's the type of thing. Like I said, we're always under a microscope. You get back to the truck and you have that little Debbie's wrapper in your pocket. Don't throw it on the side of the road. I mean, it sounds dumb, but that's the type of thing that give us a bad name.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, we've always talked about it. We've never done it. So this is a little putting the mirror in front of my face while I'm proclaiming all these noble things to do. But I told the guys here, and it happens on rivers too with fly fishermen and guides, they'll have a day where they clean up the river or whatever. But you get to know some of these locals. It's going to enhance your experience, and it's going to make you feel more at home when you're not. And returning that favor and inviting people out. I mean, you meet people in the field, and if they're nice and you get to know them, you have more in common than you don't. And maybe offer to, help with a fencing project, or get involved with a group like, all the groups that are out there that do fence projects, whether it's RMEF or Mule Deer or any of those groups, or hell, just, if you have a windy day like we have today. I've been working on my trailer and working on the electrical and cooking. But, hey, if you got a windy day and it's not great for hunting, you run into a rancher, ask them if there's anything you can do, help them out for half a day or something. I know they'd appreciate it. Otherwise, it just continues to promote that behavior of, scowling at you when you drive by and telling you to go home or whatever. Be good guests.
Yeah. That's good, man. I got an off topic question for you, because you didn't really give me the answer I was looking for the other day.
Uh-oh.
I was at a zoo and I sent you a picture of a pygmy falcon. And you're like, look at that cute little feller. And I asked you, and I don't think you ever responded. It made me feel real good about myself. But I was like, the moment I saw it, I'm like, something tells me Chris is not okay with this. Like, something tells me he's going to say something about how it's, they bred these just to get the little birds to put in the zoo or something like that.
Okay. No, you're thinking I'm a deep file, man. And I'll tell you, and not to defend my lack of prompt responses or complete responses, you get so busy. I've just been so busy that I
don't want to hear your excuses.
I know. I got to slow down and I'll tell you what I think about that, and I'll give you the answer. Well, I'll respond to it, and maybe it's not what you expected. Zoos are
you're not gonna respond to it here?
No, I am.
Oh, okay, good.
That zoos are a tough one for a lot of people, but there are a lot of zoos out there that are providing opportunities for people to see things they might not ever get to see. And if
you can straight say they would not ever get to see.
Yeah, like African species, or I mean, and yes, you can look at it from the perspective that the animal's in captivity, but to your point of what you thought you were going to hear about their bred for captivity, well, that's better maybe than taking them from the wild. I mean, if you're breeding animals simply for the opportunity to show them to people and educate people about other places that they'll maybe never see or probably won't ever see, and that stimulates their curiosity and improves their knowledge, I think it's a hell of a learning tool. But of course, there are bad examples. It's just like people, right? I mean, there's some bad eggs out there, and there's some bad facilities that have bad practices that don't probably promote well enough the animal husbandry required to keep animals healthy. So,
and here's your hunting connection, Dylan. The National Collection of Heads and Horns, which was the beginning of Boone and Crockett Records, was a display at the Bronx Zoo to show future generations what the previous generations did when they eradicated wildlife. So they were looking for representation of what was once on our great land to show future generations the mistakes we made. And that basically fired up a nation to support conservation that gives us what we have today, to be able to sit out here and chase birds with hawks and have my son shoot his first mule deer. I mean, that was a zoo. And so it's not all bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I had no idea you were thinking so positively about, all the ideas I would have from a picture.
Well, I just saw falcon, and I'm like, I only know one guy that's obsessed with falcons.
Well, I mean, is a pygmy falcon an actual species?
It is.
So there's a pygmy owl. It wasn't necessarily bred to be a pygmy. Yeah. So you just assumed that because it was small that it was bred, Dylan? Come on, man. That's a little close-minded, everybody. A little Arkansas, you could say.
Well, I was in Oklahoma, so you never know what they're going to do.
Oklahoma, that's funny.
Hey, I got it.
You got to give me a little more teaser next time to prompt me in the direction of what kind of conversation you want to get into.
Okay.
Send me a picture.
I just thought you always think deeply. Thought everything.
People write me off and say, "Well, you're now the CEO of a raptor conservation organization, and therefore you must have already been a raptor file." I wasn't. I love the way that NGOs can work on the landscape, and in a lot of ways, it's more simple than working for a state government agency or something like that. I love the way they worked. And my fascination with raptors has come since I started working with them. But it's not just about raptors. I love all kinds of critters and all different systems. And, not to dig back into the evolution of a hunter or angler, but we tend to make things more difficult and more challenging because we like the process of honing our skills. Why else would we go away from redworms and bobbers? Because they work. Right? But we got to do things like fly fishing, Hey, I wonder if I can catch them on this. It's that process. So keep learning, keep listening.
Have you ever, you've seen the fishing lure that looks like Donald Trump, haven't you?
I have not.
And everybody's buying it just to see if they can catch a fish on the Donald Trump lure.
Oh, there you go. Well, you can also take a pull top. Oh, that dates me. Not a pull top. What are they called now? They're pop tops. But old pull tops, we used to try to catch fish on those too, and it works.
I I'm gonna end it with this. I got to share something with you, Chris.
All right.
And I'm only sharing this because you mentioned car salesman. But there was this kid, and he had some special needs, but he wanted to be a car salesman. And he went to all the dealerships, and I'm not going to use the special needs accent I normally use when I tell this story, so I don't offend anyone. Oh, but he would go to all the car dealerships, and he would say, I want to sell cars for you. And they were hesitant, to say the least. And he went to one of the fancy, the Rolls Royces, and he's like, I want to sell cars for you. I can sell cars. Trust me. I can sell cars. And they said, I don't know that you're cut out for it, man. It's a hard job to sell these cars. They're real expensive, and it's a big task. And he says, I promise I can sell these cars for you. I'll move cars for you. And they said, well, we'll tell you what, if you can sell a car by the end of the day, you can have a job here as a salesman. He says, okay, yeah, I can sell your cars. So this couple strolls in, and he's giving them the tour. This car's really talking it up, and he's really talking up the safety features. This car, it never breaks down. Very, very dependable. Never breaks down. It's super reliable. Well, we've got kids, so that's important to us. Well, this car, it'll never break down on you. It's a good car. Got a good engine. It's got all these safety features. He's pointing out all the safety features. And they're test driving. They said, well, what's this button? He said, that's for hazard lights. They said, well, thought you said it would never break down. Why is it here if it'll never break down? And he said, well, it's just in case. And he said, just in case for what? You said it would never break down. You talked to us for 20 minutes about how this was the safest car on the planet. You said it'd never break down. He said, it's just in case. And they said, well, I don't know. We're worrying now, if they had to put a hazard light in here, that means they're anticipating it would break down. And he says, no, it's just in case. And he proceeds to rip his shirt off, and he says, you see these things right here? Points to his nipples. He says, I don't know why God put them there. They're just in case. That's your car salesman joke of the day.
Yeah, I know you're a dad, and that's definitely a dad joke.
Yeah,
well, he did sell the car. Got the job.
Repertoire. I like it.
Hey, you can't now. I did pull one thing from your story that you're now a grandfather.
Yes.
And so your name in my phone is going from the Condor to Papa Condor.
Papa Condor. There you go. Yep.
Well, and again, I can't say this enough. I know that, we're not going to change everyone's minds on things, but my hope for this is that people will just consider why they do what they do. Well, people, when they go out into the field, and again, there's things that I still have to consider. We've said it jokingly, but I really do have to consider, why am I going coyote hunting? If there's no purpose in this, why am I going? And Justin, to be honest with you, I haven't been since, because I just can't, I can't come up with a good reason. And as much as I love it, as fun as it is, I have to ask myself, why am I doing this?
It's pretty
that's
the pretty simple answer, Dylan, is get with your buddy Chef Mike and figure out how to cook it, and then you're all good.
Well, that's the one. See, that's the one thing that I've seen Steven Ranella cook and say, I can't make that taste good.
Dude, challenge accepted, man. That sounds like a year-long goal. How do I make a coyote delicious?
Yeah, and make me a coat while you're at it. I'd wear a coyote coat.
Would you?
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, Dylan,
nice.
you give me some good coyote hides. I'll use that gator leather I have, and we can make some seat covers.
There you go.
Coyote hide and gator leather.
Now I know why I'm going to kill coyotes. I'll be out tonight. Gentlemen, thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you'll go out now and stop. I have to ask one more question. What's the biggest animal that a hawk can take down? Like, what's the biggest animal you would hunt with hawks?
What kind of hawk?
You tell me. I don't know. I'm not a falconer.
I mentioned to him that we might have just got back from Spain, and one of the fellows here mentioned that they chased chamois over there with golden eagles.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. That was my response too, Dylan.
Yeah, and that's
holy cow.
And that's a sore subject, right? I mean, some of these critters that number fewer. I mean, I've talked to sheep hunters, and you talk to them about golden eagles, and they say, "Well, there's too many of them." And because it's not, unheard of that an eagle will strafe a sheep or a lamb or a pronghorn youngster. I mean, it happens out there, right? I'd say just remember that, yeah, that may be a problem for us because we love sheep or we love whatever the species may be, but those critters are out there trying to make a living. And the other side of that is, wow, really? A golden eagle?
Yeah.
Its size would try, to strafe a full-size doe pronghorn. That's something.
One last
so with your hawks, with your hawks, what's the biggest?
Yeah. So these guys are all, like I said earlier, they're all flying long wings. So they're all peregrines. So a big female peregrine says, because in most of the bird world, the females are bigger than the males, and the males are called tiercel, which means a third. And so they're a third smaller, or a female's a third larger than the male. The reason being is those females, because of the way they share the responsibilities of incubation and all of that, the females have to have that body mass and the reserves basically to set on those eggs and then to brood the young, and then the male comes in to feed them. Anyway, I see that's the thing. I can't do things in short. But in short, the biggest thing that we would see up here is a big female that could kill a sage grouse. And while it's rare, more rare for them to kill a big master cock sage grouse, it's possible. And that's an impressive thing. And it easily turns into a ground fight. But peregrines have, and again, if it's happened once and it's on the internet, people think it happens all the time. But they have pictures on the internet. You can go see them where the peregrine hit a brown pelican.
Really?
Or a great blue heron, But yeah, most of the time you're looking at relative to body size, what's its maximum that it could hunt. And, a tiercel male falcon, peregrine falcon, would have its hands full if it was trying to kill a big sage grouse.
What is a female peregrine weigh?
Oh gosh, now you're out beyond me. See, if Brian was in here or Paul was in here, they'd tell you the range, and then they'd tell you, well, difference. If it's an Anatum peregrine, and if it's a Peel's peregrine, right. Ounce wise.
Bigger than a baseball or smaller than a baseball?
Oh, no, much bigger than baseball. Yeah.
So these things hit this prey at up to like 160 miles an hour.
Yeah. They're capable of over 240 miles an hour in flight, but the guys are flying with their birds and they have transmitters on them that are GPS capable, and they can document flight. And in a stoop, they commonly will go over 100 miles an hour. And when they hit their prey, it sounds like a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Pop! I mean, it's audible. The folks that were out here the first, before Justin and his dad got here, they heard one of the hits and said, oh my gosh, I heard that thing. And you can hear it when they're ripping through the air. It's just, and then boom! And you can hear it audibly from pretty far away. So
that is cool.
Yeah.
Now this might be a stupid question. Do you have falcons?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I do not. I'm not a falconer.
Oh, okay. I figured you did.
I know. Well, falconry and taking care of birds year round like that, and when you're in the hunting season, when you pull them out of their mew, which is their facility that you build them, when you pull them out after they've molted all their feathers and they're ready in tip-top shape, and they call it recovering the falcon. You recover it from its space, and you start manning it, which is getting it comfortable, being on your glove, etc. When that happens, you then have to work that bird every day. If you want to be effective at falconry and killing prey, you have to work that bird every day. So it's even worse than, bird dogs. At least, my bird dog she likes birds and she hunts, but not with me yet. And it's been 6 years, but the rest of the year, she's just part of the family, right? She's just part of the family, which is not the same with falconry. Falconry birds require a lot of attention. And if you're going to hunt successfully with them, you got to run them. You got to fly them every day. So,
Dylan, it's very similar to hunting with a longbow. I mean, if you're going to be especially effective, you've got to dedicate yourself to the mastery of that. And you're not being fair to the game or the falcon if you're not going to go 110%. And Chris never do that.
No, I may do it in retirement, but definitely not in my current job because that's increased my my busyness.
Gotcha. No, I always just thought like old Papa Condor gets home and goes out to his falcon shed. You probably got like homing pigeons or something. You seem like a homing pigeon kind of guy.
No, I've got 3 welders and a wood shop and a bunch of dogs and chickens.
How many miles you have on this trailer?
This trailer's probably got 150, 160,000 miles on it. Yeah. So, no, and it's kind of like people that talk about, you know, the real nice boats, like whether it's a walleye boat or something like that or ocean boat, you know, you can go buy a boat and add that payment to your monthly, or you can find a buddy who's got one and pay for fuel. So that's my strategy. I go hawking every year with these guys and
pays for fuel and cooks some food.
Pays for fuel and cooks food, and they're glad to have it, and I'm glad to have the experience. So I'm not yet a falconer.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Now, before we go, where can people learn more about the Peregrine Fund at?
Yeah, it's www.peregrinefund.org. You can go there. And if you're interested in the falconry, I strongly encourage you to go to the Archives of Falconry and just type in Archives of Falconry. I'm not sure exactly what the website is, but John Goodell runs the Archives of Falconry. And through that, you can also go the NAFA, which is the Association for Falconry. That's a good one. And yeah, find a local falconer. If you want to find a uniquely crazed individual about sporting a field, go find a local falconer and have them take you out and see these birds fly. Whether it's chasing rabbits with red tails or Harris hawks, or running long wings on prairie grouse.
I actually stumbled upon one a few years ago. I was out hunting and needed to going door to door looking for more land and stroll up on this guy, and he's got this falcon on his arm. I'm like, dude, what the heck is that, bro? Like, that is a massive bird. And he's like, this is my falcon. And I'm like, wow, okay. And he like showed it off, but it was incredible just to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get a break in the weather tomorrow morning so Justin and his dad can see these birds fly. And nothing like eating a falcon caught sharp-tailed grouse.
Oh, sounds delicious.
Or duck, for that matter, because you know what happens? It's not all shot up.
Right. Just missing a chunk of wing.
Yeah, maybe. Might have a puncture wound in its neck. But yeah. No, they're so nice to clean. You know, it's like head shooting a feral hog or something. You know, it's just so much cleaner than a double lung shot. You know, have all the blood. It's just, yeah, you can harvest more organs like the duck fat to cook a falcon caught duck that doesn't have the cavity busted by shot, to take that and harvest that caul fat and use that to cook those breasts, man.
See, this is what happens when 2 fat kids get together.
And I've got some red beans on the stove outside. I need to go check.
You all know I love arrows. So therefore, I love vanes, and I love trying different vane configurations. I love seeing how they fly, how they tune, how quiet they are. Boning archery makes, in my opinion, the greatest selection of vanes known to man. And for good reason, because they've been making vanes longer than your grandpapa's been alive. They make a phenomenal line of vanes. So whatever you're trying to do, whether you're wanting to shoot paper, 3D, or you're wanting to go out and hunt, whether you're shooting a crossbow, compound, they've got vanes for you. Now, they just recently introduced, in my opinion, the greatest vane of all time, which is the Alpha. It's an all-new design. It's made out of the same stiff material that my previous favorite vane, the Heat vane, is made out of. So it's whisper quiet. It stabilizes your arrow very well, and it's just an all-around great vane. Now, they also just introduced the Atlas, which is the same shape and profile as the Alpha, out of the same classic blazer material. Guys, here's what I'll tell you. Boning simply makes really good products. If you are an arrow tinkerer like me and you want to try a bunch of different vanes, I would highly encourage you to go try out Boning. Some of my favorite vanes are definitely the Heat vane. The Heat vane in a 4-fletch is almost unbeatable. Just barely outdone by an alpha vein in a 3 fletch with a hardcore left helical. That's just money every single time. Guys, go check out Boning, whether you're looking for, longer 4-inch veins, whether you're looking for micro veins, they've got something for you. And I promise you it's going to perform every time. Well, guys, thank you again so much for taking time out of your falcon experience to sit and talk conservation and just being a thoughtful hunter. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Everybody have a fantastic week and keep the dusty side up.
Thank you.